Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X Twitter at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to the latest edition of the Movies TV Mad Daily. Smash the like button, put down a comment, share, subscribe, tell the whole world about this perfection. So today we are talking about Sean Gunn playing Maxwell Lord in DC Universe, and we're going to first see him in Superman. So that's quite exciting. Now, there's been some controversy over this casting because Sean is James Gunn's brother. I don't think he gets the work he does with James solely because they're brothers. I think that is an element of it, of course, but Sean, I think, is a very talented lad. And James likes to work with people he can trust. He works with the same people. You get that with Christopher Nolan because there's very few people you can trust in the entertainment industry. That's a fact. It isn't a nice, cuddly, warm industry. It's actually horrible, full of horrible people. Really, really horrible people. So if there's a group of people in Tinseltown that you trust, you work with them. I don't really have any issue with Sean Gunn playing Maxwell Lord. But Sean briefly spoke about his role in the DCE, or not the DCEU, but DC Universe, and he said he can't say much. So I kind of have an idea of what kind of Maxwell Lord he's going to be. Now, in Wonder Woman 84, Pedro Pascal, the best thing about the film, played a villainous con artist version of Maxwell Lord. I don't believe this Maxwell Lord is going to be a villain. He won't be perfect. He'll have issues. He'll make immoral decisions. I think he's going to be a kind of business mogul, tech genius, because there's a version of the comics where he funds the Justice League. He gives them the tech. He funds them to be able to go and fight crime. And there's different issues that come along with that. So I think he could be a kind of a more interesting Nick Fury, if you like. I don't think he's their leader. I don't think he gives them commands, but because he funds them, it kind of complicates the thing, and that could be really, really interesting to see. So I think that's the kind of thing Sean Gunn will be doing as Maxwell Lord. And in Superman, we may see the beginnings of him funding a Justice League, him coming up with an idea for a Justice League. Don't forget, there are going to be other DC characters like Guy Gardner, like Hawkgirl, and maybe even a few others. So, and obviously there's Mr. Terrific as well. So as I say, it's interesting. And I think this is the direction James Gunn's going in. Now, as I say every day, I don't know if this film's going to be brilliant, mid, or crap. I don't. I want it to be fantastic. I've given you my reservations. I've given you my good feelings, how I feel about James Gunn as a writer-director. I do like him as a writer-director. But it's not about, like, being inconsistent. It's about giving you my reservations because life is about balance. 50% of me is kind of confident in James Gunn doing this and running DC Universe, and 50% of me isn't. I'm not happy that the Green Lantern Corps is being trapped in a True Detective series on Max. I've said that repeatedly. I'm not going to go back. I think it's a dumb idea. But today, in terms of Sean Gunn playing Maxwell Lord, that could be very, very interesting. I mean, when you look at Sean, he's a bit of a chameleon. He can play different things. He can do voices. I mean, he's also going to be playing, what's that creature called? Weasel or whatever it is as well. So he's a multi-talented dude. And, you know, he's done very well, for James in the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy as well. So one thing's for sure, despite being James Gunn's brother, Sean Gunn is a very multi-talented man, and no one can say any different. So I think this could be a more exciting, interesting version of Maxwell Lord, rather than him just being a villain. It's a bit more complicated. He kind of owns the Justice League. He kind of may even ask them to do certain nefarious things, certain immoral things that they don't want to do. But it puts them in an uncomfortable position because he's funding them. He provides them with tech. And I think we've already seen on location that they're wearing things that he's funded and made with his name on it. So it's going to be a very, very interesting dynamic. And I think one of the things we didn't have in the DCEU is this kind of character, a Nick Fury. Now, interestingly enough, I thought that Perry White may be kind of like a Nick Fury in the DCEU. Even though he's Perry White, maybe that's just a code name. Maybe he works for some agency with Amanda Waller. And I thought he may be involved in leading the Justice League like a Nick Fury, even though it's not like that in the comics. It's certainly something I would have looked at doing, considering who was playing him, because I think the actor is absolutely perfect to do something like that. When you bring in an actor like Larry Fishburne, you want him being a little bit more than Perry White, the chief and the editor that barks at Lois Lane. And in a way, he's wasted. So that's what I would have done with Perry White in the DCEU, and I thought they might go that direction. So I think Maxwell Lord playing this role and Sean Gunn playing it in a kind of cool, kind of laid-back way, but basically owning the Justice League in a way because he's funding them. He's paying for their tech, he's creating their tech. So I think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic. What kind of dynamic will Superman have with Maxwell Lord, and Batman and the rest of them? And Wonder Woman, if she's going to be involved. We still don't know what's going to happen, if anything, with Wonder Woman in DC Universe. Where's Gal Gadot? Interesting. But I don't think she's going to be Wonder Woman. I don't know why they're lying about that. I don't know why they don't just come out. I don't get it. Obviously, there's some kind of negotiations. Maybe they're paying her off. I really don't know. Probably the same reason why Ta-Nehisi Coates and J.J. Abrams' Superman of Colour hasn't been officially cancelled at Warner Brothers yet. But anyway, I digress. But I think that Maxwell Lord, not being a villain, but being this kind of character, is very, very interesting. And I think it brings a different dynamic to the Justice League. A dynamic unless you've read that era, because it is in the comics. I think Maxwell Lord does put together the Justice League in the 70s comics or the early 80s, whatever. And he is funding them. And he is giving them their tech. And it creates complications. So I think it's very interesting that James is looking to do this. I think this is what he's going to do. For sure, I don't think Maxwell Lord will be a villain in Superman or in DC Universe, but he won't be a perfectly behaved human being. And it'll be interesting what his motivations are and what, if anything, his relationship with Amanda Waller will be. They do have a connection in the comics, by the way. So Amanda Waller and Maxwell Lord are both ruthless, nefarious characters. Nefarious means problematic. Slightly immoral, slightly villainous, but not proper Lex Luthor type of villains, if you know what I mean. So I think they will have quite a bit to do with each other. Don't be surprised in Peacemaker 2 if Maxwell Lord and Waller show up. Don't be surprised if Maxwell Lord shows up in the series Waller. So it's all going to be very, very interesting. So it's not like James Gunn's plan is totally bogus. It's not like he doesn't have any good ideas. But the problem that WB and Gunn and Saffron and DC Studios are going to have is getting people interested in things like, in stuff like Waller. Superman's a big release. It will be interesting to see if Superman can make money. I think in the position they're in right now, if they were to bring in 500 to 600 million, which I think is the kind of money they will bring in for Superman, anything else will be a bonus. I think 500, 600 million at the global box office will be a success for them because I don't think they're spending a lot of money on Superman. I think they're spending just over 100 million. At most 150, not your usual 200 to 250 million that Zack Snyder must have got for Man of Steel. Just look at it. That's an expensive movie. There's no question about that. Amy Adams costs money. Russell Crowe costs money, right? These were top actors. Well, you don't have those level of performers in James Gunn's Superman, and there's a reason for it, because it's a cheaply budgeted movie. It's why they started to leak nonsense that the movie's budget was around 300 to 400 million. That's simply not possible. We spoke yesterday about WB's credit rating being reduced and taken to a minus. They've got no fucking money. They're on the verge of bankruptcy. So this film is going to be a very cheaply made film. That doesn't mean bad. And it gives it an advantage. It means it doesn't have to make the $1 billion that they need if they're not spending that much money. And it could be a great result for James Gunn, David Zaslav, DC Studios, and WB. Could find them slowly but surely getting their way back, because a successful Superman movie launches DC Universe in a successful way. A successful movie that interests the general public means they're going to be interested in Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. They're putting things together for that movie. They're not waiting to see how Superman does. I think that could be a mistake. It also shows they have some confidence in James Gunn and what he's doing, and his master plan, if it is indeed a master plan. But I think Maxwell Lord being involved with the Justice League is a good idea. It's an interesting idea. And I think Sean Gunn will certainly be a very, very interesting version of Maxwell Lord. And I know he's James Gunn's brother, but it is what it is. These are the decisions that have been made. As I say, it's definitely a cheaper production than Man of Steel. Superman Returns definitely cost around $250 million. We've spoken before about the expensive Return to Krypton sequence that they didn't even use in the production, which is insane. And you know, when you think Superman Returns barely made, it didn't make 400 million. So, you know, some crazy decisions. So we've seen the past two Superman movies have been hugely expensive, but this one is not. Wouldn't it be ironic if the more cheaper Superman movie is the one that's actually successful? Gunn has, look, I have reservations about James Gunn and Superman and DC Universe. I think a lot of us have. But his record is good. The Guardians trilogy, brilliant films. The Suicide Squad is a brilliant film. Whether it made money or not, doesn't matter. Good movie. Great movie. Peacemaker is probably his best work. So, as I've said before, in terms of comic book, TV and movies, he's got a great record. He does things in a certain way. He values the smaller characters, there's no question about that. But he has a good record in creating quality in terms of these kind of characters. But Superman is on a different level, isn't it? And the pressure with Superman is huge. You saw the reaction to the Superman costume reveal. Even his fans were kind of, you know, we're not kind of liking this costume. But I think as I look at that costume, it is growing on me a little bit. Look, I'm not the biggest fan of the material. I don't like the Kingdom Come S-Shield. I certainly don't like it as marketing. I think the traditional S-Shield is better. What do you think, guys? I've always wanted to get a Superman S-Shield tattooed to my chest. Do you think I should finally do it? Because once I do it, it's permanent. I mean, it's better than getting a woman's name on there, isn't it? Who's going to dump me and break my heart. So, yeah, I think I might do it. Hit the like button. Comments down below. Should I get the S-Shield, the Superman S-Shield, hugely tattooed to my chest? We want a huge one. We want a huge Man of Steel type one. We don't want a little one, right? We want one, when I take my top off, the ladies go, wow, this is fucking Superman. And, you know, my lovemaking skills, ladies, you will think I'm Superman. But yeah, let me know what you think about that. So I am excited about Sean Gunn as Maxwell Lord. I think there's a lot of potential in what James Gunn's looking to do there. I think it could work out very, very well. But what do you think, guys? What do you think? Are you excited to see Maxwell Lord in James Gunn's Superman? Sean Gunn playing Maxwell Lord. It's kind of interesting because I've never really seen Sean Gunn, the man, perform. I've seen him play characters like creatures and stuff, but I've never seen him in the flesh playing a character. I mean, we saw him, I think, in the Suicide Squad very, very quickly as someone. I do remember that, but not properly. And this is a big character. This is a big opportunity for Sean Gunn, by the way, to put himself in the shop window. He hasn't had many opportunities to do that, so his brother has really done him a solid here. I personally think he'll do very well. I think it will be an interesting character. But yeah, we'll see about that. But it certainly puts a new spin on the Justice League dynamic. I think it puts a more interesting spin on the Justice League dynamic. And it will be interesting if that works. So we're getting a very, very different type of Superman movie. It's not going to be a typical Superman movie. It's not an origin story. They haven't cast a Jor-El and Lara, which is a shame, but Gunn doesn't seem to be going in that direction. We're getting a Fortress of Solitude. We're getting a Jimmy Olsen. We're getting everything. We're getting a Perry White. We've got a Mara and Pa Kent. Well, they don't seem to have cast a Lana Lang either, which is interesting. So I don't think we'll be spending much time in young Clark Smallville. I think he's going to avoid some of the stuff we've seen before. But we've already spoken about Maxwell Lord. We're going to get a very different type of Lex Luthor, kind of, an evil genius, a mad scientist kind of thing, stroke billionaire businessman. And I mean, that's interesting as well. What if any, what kind of dynamic will Lex Luthor and Maxwell Lord have? That'll be an interesting one to look for as well. So I think all these characters mixing together, plotting, maybe against the Justice League sometimes, maybe Maxwell Lord as well as funding them, is manipulating the situation along with Amanda Waller. I expect Amanda Waller to play a huge role, apart from Waller and Peacemaker, which I expect to see a little bit of her in. I think she will play a big role. Now, James Gunn said that Amanda Waller isn't in Superman, so we're going to take his word for that. They can't all be in this movie because this is a movie about Superman. And if you make it about everybody else, Superman fans, like myself, are going to be hugely pissed off. And James Gunn is aware of this. So it's a balancing act with other DC characters. But I do expect Maxwell Lord, Amanda Waller, and Lex Luthor to, be having a lot of stuff together in the future of DC Universe, which could be very exciting and very interesting and very different and very bold. Because we've seen it in the animated Justice League series, we just haven't seen it in live action before, which is a shame. And the reason we haven't seen it in live action because they've gone in different directions. I think the direction of Superman 78 was the way that Tom Mankiewicz and Dick Donner wanted to go. It worked, it's perfect. It's a romantic movie. It's brilliant. It's the best Superman film yet. Man of Steel is a great Superman film, as I've said before, a contemporary one. It does shave against the grain. The DCEU with Snyder, Goyer and Nolan did shave against the grain. There's no question about that. And maybe this Superman film may, in some ways, also at times shave against the grain. And it'll be interesting what reaction the fans have. Whatever happens with James Gunn's Superman or DC Universe, we know that the Snyder fans will come out in their droves, even if they like it and say they hate it. That's going to be something that we see. It's going to happen. I mean, I'm a Snyder fan. I'm a DCEU fan as well. But I'm not going to say something's bad if it's brilliant. If I don't like it, I'll say I won't like it. If I do like it, I'll say I like it. If I think it's mid, I'll say it's mid. I will be honest and genuine because I owe that to you. The people who come in every day and subscribe and like and share and comment, making the effort to support my channel. I owe you my honest, genuine opinion. So I'm not going to say something that's not true. But nobody knows. That's where we are. We're literally on the tightrope with James Gunn and DC Universe. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't. And it will be very interesting because Superman, as problematic as he's been in relating to the general audience for many, many years now. He's still a huge character, a famous character. And if you can just find a way to make him relatable to the kids, to the TikTok generation, to, the regular general audience, you could have a very special situation here. And since Dick Donner, no one's really been able to do that. As I say, Man of Steel wasn't a flop. Didn't make the money the studio wanted, but again, it didn't create the interest. And if you look at Smallville definitely made millions of Superman fans around the world. Young kids became Superman fans because of Smallville. But think about how they did it. They took Clark Kent, made him Peter Parker. They took Lex Luthor and made him Harry Osborn. They literally took the Spider-Man dynamic and gave it to Superman. And that's how they made him relatable and relevant, not by dressing him up in the costume. So that says a lot about Superman in the costume and how difficult he is to make relatable. In terms of James Gunn's Superman, he's going to take a good person, where people don't like good people. They think they're too good to be true and we should be suspicious of good people. And I think it's going to be interesting what direction that goes in. I expect in this film at the beginning for Guy Gardner to mistrust Superman, for Hulk Girl to mistrust Superman, for Mr. Terrific to mistrust Superman, until something happens within the third act of the movie where everyone kind of loves Superman and applauds him and begins to trust him. And I think that's the kind of thing we're going to see in this movie. If James Gunn can pull that off, he's got a chance of creating a successful, enjoyable movie. But it isn't easy. It isn't easy with Superman. It isn't easy with films today. The parameters that you have to make films on with DEI, pleasing this one, pleasing that one, are very difficult. It's virtually impossible today to make a great movie. It was easier to make a great Superman in 1978. Without offending anyone, you didn't have to worry about representation, inclusion, and if you did represent and include, people, you didn't have to worry how you represented them. If you had a black person in a film, they could be angry without people worrying about stereotypes. If you wanted to have a woman wearing a low-cut top, you could have a woman wearing a low-cut top. It's the parameters that you're making a movie on are very difficult. And basically, the people on your set and working with you can complain about every single thing. And if you don't listen to them, you could end up being deemed as a problematic director. So the parameters that these people have to make films on today is very, very difficult. And even if you do the perceived right things, people may end up still complaining. So, and then you've got the audience who doesn't take much to piss the audience off these days. And then you've got the political element as well. So it will be interesting what kind of direction Gunn's gone here. Will he avoid being, let's say, woke? The actress playing Hulk Girl has a loose mouth. She could be a problem as well. He needs to rein her in. But it's very difficult to keep these people's mouths shut because they go off the reservation. They say what they want to say. And that could be damaging. For the next few minutes, let's change the subject from the DCU to Maxwell Lord, Sean Gunn, and Superman and James Gunn. Let's talk about Rachel Zegler. She certainly has gone off the reservation in terms of Snow White. You see, when Disney decided to make a live-action remake of Snow White, yes, they always intended to be progressive. There's nothing wrong with it, modernising a very old story. But what you don't want is your actress saying, I hated that movie as a kid. It freaked me out. It's weird, it's weird, it's weird. Her literally just slaughtering the animated movie. Because the biggest business you're going to get for that live-action remake is the people who love the original animated movie. And it isn't just older people. Younger people have been shown the animated movie and love it too. The last thing they want is to have the star of the movie slaughtering the reason they're excited about this live-action remake. And then you've got the situation with Peter Dinklage crying because there was going to be dwarves in the movie. There's nothing wrong with having dwarves in a movie, that's originally, the original story is called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. There's nothing wrong with having little people. There's nothing wrong with having people who are little in real life and representing them in the right way. But Disney kind of had tall and small people. Crazy. Why not just show off your smaller actors, your smaller height actors? Show what great actors they can be. Peter Dinklage himself showed how good smaller actors are, because they're no different, right, than the regular sized actors. Smaller, a dwarf type actor can be as good an actor as anybody else. There's no reason why they wouldn't be able to, right? So what's so offensive about having 7 short actors playing the dwarves? And because of this crazy pressure, Disney decided to CGI the dwarves. And then there's the representation of Snow White kind of giving the broom to the dwarves and making them her bitch. There's situations like that. There's also the situation of Snow White being called Snow White because she has a white complexion, and obviously Rachel hasn't. It's a pretty crazy situation. But if Rachel had just, kept that mouth shut of hers, they wouldn't be in this situation. Who's going to want to employ Rachel Zegler in the future? One thing I like about Rachel Zegler is she's honest, she's straightforward. She's a spoiled, overconfident girl. She doesn't pretend to be a nice person. She is what she is. I've had clashes with Rachel Zegler and her fans before. It isn't a pleasant experience, but I think I held my own. She really does like herself a hell of a lot, and that's the problem. And she doesn't even pretend to be a humble, decent human being. So on those parameters, how can anyone make a decent movie these days when you've got all these crazy situations on your back? Political correctness, diversity, all of this shit. And come on, it is bullshit. There's nothing wrong with having representation. There's nothing wrong with having, different people from different backgrounds who happen to be talented. But that's not the situation at the moment. And as I say, the parameters you have to work with to make a movie these days, to make a television show, even to make stand-up comedy, is insane. So you can't make decent entertainment on these parameters that they're forced to work with. And these are the challenges that people like James Gunn are working under. That's the truth. So how do you make a good film? A great movie within those parameters, but it's very, very challenging. We will see. You look at the Suicide Squad, and James Gunn, if you listen to his commentary, his director's commentary, how they got, Daddy's little girl or whatever it was. What was that tattoo that Margot Robbie's Harley has got in the original Suicide Squad movie? Whatever it is, they took the tattoo off because they didn't like it. Whatever it is. It's things like that. It's the way Harley kills that gangster and how they try and make her a hero, even though she's a villain herself, but how they took pleasure out of a woman killing a man like that, right? Is she any better than that man? Anyway, so this was all, I think this is what I'm talking about. Because Margot Robbie is a third-wave feminist. I like Margot, she's a good actor, she's a sweet girl, but I don't agree with her politics or her views on women or feminism. And when you're working with people like this, as I say, they're in your ear. So how do you make a film that you want to make under those parameters? Answer, you virtually can't unless you're a very strong director. Now, when you're Christopher Nolan, as I say, Nolan works with people who are not going to get in his ear. I don't think that Nolan's films are particularly diverse. I think that Nolan has a reputation for not being able to write good female characters. I think that's bullshit. But Nolan doesn't bore on about representation and inclusion. He makes great movies. And he doesn't talk about the shit. Because it's interesting, isn't it? The actors and directors who don't talk about diversity. And people like Clint Eastwood, Christopher Nolan. Gunn's a little bit more woke. And his politics is what kind of got like the alt-right to stitch him up with his old tweets. So now he keeps his mouth shut. politically, because he was really going on and on, because he couldn't handle being successful, because he was just an ordinary dude who loved movies before Guardians. And he got a bit overexcited, I think, James, when he first became famous. He's a much different person now, and he conducts himself in a different way. So he's got to be careful with this Superman movie, because everyone is relying on it to be successful. Us DC and Superman fans, you know, but especially the studio. The studio needs a win with Superman.